Masks in Five Nights at Freddy's hold a lot of symbolism, lore, and mysteries ready to be unpacked. There are numerous examples of significant story uses for masks throughout the Five Nights at Freddy's decade-long story, and Scott Cawthon's repeated use of masks in his stories has not changed when transitioning over to the Mimic era. So, my big questions for today include, where do masks show up in Five Nights at Freddy's? What do they represent or tell us? And how has that changed throughout the years? Now with that short intro out of the way, let's just jump straight into the analysis. To start my journey, I went through all the FNAF material that I could and noted all the instances of masks, or occasionally heads if their use was similar enough, that I could find within the story. So let's start by running through all of those uses and see what symbolism and similarities arise. Starting slow with FNAF 1, all I really found was Ralph, aka the phone guy, mentioning that your eyes will stick out of the front of the animatronic head if you get stuffed in it. However, this likely isn't very lore relevant to the rest of the games. FNAF 2, on the other hand, is much more interesting, introducing us to the well-known Freddy mask mechanic that is integral to the player's survival in the game. Some theorists have connected the end-of-night hallucinations, where you seem to take the place of Freddy Fazbear, to this very mask, stating that the use of a possibly haunted Freddy mask every night could result in the player having hallucinations from the perspective of that same mask on an animatronic. A good piece of evidence for this is the Fazbear Fright story, You're the Band, where a similar situation occurs with a Freddy mask. However, it is worth noting that that story was a part of the 12th entry in the series, which was made up of cancelled stories, so its use for lore is certainly questionable. Then we have the more important use of masks in FNAF 2, Give Gifts, Give Life. In this minigame, the puppet or marionette is seen giving presents to 4 dead kids and then giving them 4 animatronic masks afterwards, with a 5th kid appearing at the very end of the minigame. There are many ways to interpret this minigame, and I personally haven't thought too much about it critically, so I won't be discussing what I truly think this minigame means in the overall story today. At the very least, however, the fact that the puppet puts the masks on the children when the prompt says give life means that these masks must somehow represent something spiritual or possibly related to possession, hence giving life to these spirits again. As an additional small note here for FNAF 2, Golden Freddy's jump scare in this game is just his floating head or mask, even though in a different render we see his whole body. Interestingly, his jump scare is also what ends the Give Gifts, Give Life minigame, originating from where the 5th kid without a mask appears. FNAF 3 continues the trend of some pretty lore-significant uses of masks in the games. Starting with both endings of FNAF 3, we have the iconic lineup of the original animatronic heads. In the bad ending, the eyes of the animatronics are still lit up. However, the good ending seems to extinguish those lights, leaving just the empty shells of the animatronics behind. This imagery seems once again to be connected to spirits and possession, as to get the good ending you need to complete Happiest Day and its preceding minigames. Additionally, this lineup, Happiest Day, and Give Gifts Give Life are what convinced me that animatronic heads and masks are indicative or related to the same idea. All the kids with animatronic masks on must come together for Happiest Day, so that the lights can go out in the animatronic heads lineup. If Give Gifts Give Life represents the puppet somehow allowing the children's spirits to possess or control the animatronics, which is a popular theory, then the spirits must leave and move past the masks/heads that they were given to move on and leave the animatronics in Happiest Day. I feel like either this explanation, the fact that the use of masks in Happiest Day could parallel the bullies at the crying child's birthday, or both of these parallels are meant to be what is represented through the Happiest Day masks falling to the ground. Regardless, for this analysis video, I'm still going to be noting the use of both heads and masks. Looking at only Happiest Day again, there are other children possibly wearing masks of the other characters, potentially connecting to older mascots that we'll see in Secret of the Mimic. However, to get the main 4 children with Freddy's masks to appear, you must complete the secret minigames from all nights. Interestingly, in the minigames where you get the children, they don't have the masks until you check on them again in the Happiest Day minigame. As a final note for FNAF 3, we also see many of the animatronic shells, including many of their heads, around the Fazbear's Fright location, possibly containing the agony or remnant from the MCI. FNAF 4 only has one significant use of masks in the entire game, and that is, of course, Foxy Bro Michael and the other bullies. As I mentioned a bit ago, this seems to be mirrored in Happiest Day, where the crying child had his worst day on his birthday, thanks to the 4 bullies in masks in FNAF 4, and then the puppet sets up his happiest day by turning that birthday into a happy moment with 4 different nice kids in the exact same masks. This also hints at the fact that the Freddy's characters and merch predate the opening of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, with the FNAF 4 minigame seemingly taking place all the way back in 1983. And now, unfortunately for me, we have to move on to a much tougher game to dissect. After looking through all of Sister Location, I found 2 interesting ideas related to masks, or heads, that can symbolize parts of the Funtime Spirit's journey. First of all, I want to point out the use of specifically faceplates for this one group of animatronics. The faceplates are easily removable, and are likely designed that way so that they can be dismantled by the scooper easily, as seen with Ballora in Night 4. So, what if the removable faceplates is meant to represent the lack of identity/control that these spirits have within their robot hosts? I previously mentioned how masks and animatronic heads seem to be tied to spirits and possession, so the fact that this group of animatronics has a fractured and detachable face made me curious about this connection. After all, it seems that the spirit's souls/remnant may be split up between the animatronics, causing them to be more confused and aggressive than the other groups of animatronics we've seen in the past. These animatronics do not have distinctive soul identities. If we assume that the souls aren't split up at all, then why does Michael say that he put Elizabeth back together after Ennard has been formed, thus combining all the souls back together into one vessel? There are multiple different interpretations and theories that connect to this idea, but I'm not here to speak on that much today. I just feel like the removable faceplates are a neat use of symbolism/imagery for this idea if I'm right. Or maybe I'm thinking too much about a cool design choice. However, the even more important and obvious use of masks in this game is the Ennard mask itself, the only sign of identity for the combined endoskeletons of the Funtimes. Throughout the game, you can see the Ennard mask looming over you in the primary control module, meaning at some point during Night 5, Ennard specifically went to that room to get the mask. I think the use of the Ennard mask, something at the literal center of Circus Baby's entertainment and rental, signifies the spirits being combined into one from now on. Still connecting to the clown imagery for their avatar, the spirits take on an amalgamous form that literally rests at the heart of their home, and looks like the generic clown that they're all meant to look like, or be based on. I mean, what's the in-universe reason for the spirits grabbing the mask when they canonically leave it as soon as they enter Michael's body? I think that it must be a representation of all those spirits now in one place, finally together. And then, once Elizabeth leaves the vessel before FNAF 6, the spirits take on a mask that more accurately represents their combined conscience once again, now taking on a form very similar to Freddy Fazbear, which would connect more to the MCI if you think the MCI are within the Funtimes. Now, besides the progression of Ennard to Molten Freddy, there isn't really any use of masks or heads within Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator. And then, in UCN, while the FNAF 2 gameplay with the mask does return, there also isn't really any mask shenanigans going on here. So unless you want to argue that Old Man Consequences has a Gator or Foxy mask on, which I will not be here, then we're moving on to the next game. Ah yes, Help Wanted, the start of the modern FNAF era of games. Let's see what juicy mask lore you have to offer us. Once again, as previously mentioned, the mask gameplay returns from FNAF 2, but now in VR. The roller coaster-esque cart for when you get the opening hand unit speech seems to be decorated with a Freddy mask on the front. There is also a Freddy mask within the game as a collectible for 20 coins. To get one of the coins in the Foxy repair minigame, you also have to put Foxy's head on yourself. However, the main lore significant mask in this game is of course the mask that Tape Girl mentions in tape number 9, that Jeremy seems to have dropped on the floor of the supply closet. Notably, this mask is not the VR visor since he is described as still wearing the headset later in that tape. I'm also not very convinced that it is his actual face, since that never comes back as a plot point or as an effect of the glitch trap virus. I will also have more to say on this particular issue in the next video. The final mask connection is that both in-universe and literally for the players of the game, until the flat mode released, you need to put on a VR headset to play the game. Not too different from putting on a mask. Now, Curse of Dreadbear is where the mask connections with the Mimic become much more apparent. Starting smaller, we have the Plushkin Patch level, where the super lovable plush babies return from the original game, now donning masks of Freddy, Chica, Foxy, and Balloon Boy. Very interestingly, the only one of the original band without a plush baby mask represented is Bonnie. In the Trick or Treat level, you are presented with 6 masks of the characters from this level. To get a specific animatronic to not kill you, you must wear their specific mask if they are the one opening the front door. To be honest, there doesn't seem to be much mask lore here, besides drawing more of an association between Fall Fest and these masks. This connection continues to be drawn with the fact that all 6 of those same masks can be found as prizes within the Fall Fest barn area for completing a level. Finally, we have the Vanny mask, found after getting the secret 5th purple key and going into the locked cellar in the Corn Maze level. The Vanny mask present in Curse of Dreadbear is unlike any version we've seen since then, with the Ruin AR design exterior, but a more fleshy or organic interior as opposed to the technology seen in Ruin. Wearing this mask and holding the Glitch Trap plush is also what allows the player to hear this one-sided dialogue of a reluctant follower, likely Vanessa, speaking to Glitch Trap. While FNAF AR's level of importance and canonicity is up for debate, I think it's valuable to at least see what mask significance this game has to offer us. For the 3rd time in a row now, FNAF 2's iconic mask gameplay returns, but now in AR. More curiously, in an email from Lewis to Ness, 2 people who work on the Fazbear Funtime service, Lewis asks Ness about why she ordered 3 rubber masks. Now this seems clearly to be from the influence of Vanny/Glitch Trap, but why would Glitch Trap need these rubber masks? To my knowledge, this plot point never comes back around, so I don't think it's very important to the future games and to the rest of the Mimic arc. Ah, Security Breach, the mixed bag that you are. Let's see what you have to offer for us. First of all, there are multiple different masks that you can collect throughout the game, most notably comedy and tragedy masks, possibly hinting at the old origin of Sun and Moon, or the fact that they used to be a theater animatronic, as described in the Tales from the Pizzaplex short story, The Bobby Dots. Going all the way back to the promotional trailers for the game, we also see the Curse of Dreadbear Vanny mask, while someone sinister speaks to Vanessa. Looking at the Tangle's design, we have the main mask or head figure of Funtime Freddy, which is something I discussed a lot more in the last video. All around the Pizzaplex, especially in the lower, grimier floors, we see Staffbot heads decapitated from their bodies. Who knows, maybe they're just trying to imitate popular theorist Minibite games. I'm flattered, guys, I really am. There's also a weirdly large Freddy head down in the sinkhole, which is still an enigma to this day. Maybe it's a relic from MCM all the way back in the days of Secret of the Mimic? Your guess is as good as mine regarding that question. Finally, we have Princess Quest, where you get the Vanny mask from the Grim Foxy maze in the 3rd arcade cabinet. And this may be a stretch on my part, but these smaller bunny enemies kinda look like heads or masks, and they do attach themselves to you when they try to attack you. That does seem pretty similar to masks. Ruin has some very obvious connections to masks, which might be part of the course correction from Scott Coffin after Security Breach to make the story more clear going forward, but that's just speculation on my part. Starting with the obvious, we have the Vanny AR mask that you receive at the start of the game from MaskBot. This Vanny mask has many lore implications that theorists have gone into extensively at this point. The Tangle and Mask collectibles also both return in this DLC, showing their continued and insistent importance within the games. Finally, we have the Roxy mask and the weird AR stuff going on with her, both of which are still weird inclusions in the recent games. I actually got a comment on my last video from Invalid Cookie who argued that Glitch Trap didn't die pre-Ruin and was still alive during that time. One of the pieces of evidence that they brought up for this was the green repaired AR Roxy effect that I just mentioned, something that none of the animatronics within the game share. Green is a color that has been associated with Glitch Trap before, and why else would Roxy be green in this context? Well, you see, in my opinion, Glitch Trap has always been more associated with the color purple than green. After all, it kinda goes along with mimicking Afton. But besides that, as that could be honestly argued either way, does Roxy ever act like Glitch Trap, or how she acted previously in Security Breach when we know she was likely acting under Glitch Trap's control? I don't think so, and if anything, she's the least aggressive and most normal of the group in Ruin. Sure, she is the only one to have this green AR effect, but I think that the repaired form must have more to do with the previous relationship that Roxy and Cassie had than anything to do with Glitch Trap. That's why Cassie with the AR mask on can see Roxy for who she was when they were friends all that time ago, fully repaired and normal again. However, I could be easily proven wrong in future games, and I am very open to changing my mind on these subjects, so be sure to keep leaving your theories below. Help Wanted 2 features the return of the Vanny mask again, possibly being the exact same one from Ruin. This mask appears to be given up in a trade for Glitch Trap, in one form or another, allowing for the mask to be given to Cassie by MaskBot in the Phase Force ending. In the same Princess Quest 4 minigame, where you give up that Vanny mask, lighting up the graves in a very specific order opens a hidden room with a chest and a Bonnie mask that looks very familiar to our player. Note that it is specifically a Bonnie mask that we unlock here. Looking closer at these memory dolls, each of them are also a blank doll with one of the 6 character masks on the face. An interesting way to depict these characters or spirits, if that's what they're going for, instead of just simple character plushies. The weird Roxy mask also returns in Help Wanted 2, and a Staffbot head can also be obtained as a collectible. The Help Wanted 2 December update gave us our first look at the exterior of what seems to be Murray's costume manor, with an interestingly labeled mask sign, and a double vision puzzle made by MCM. Into the Pit has a randomly obtainable item that is a Freddy mask from your house's attic. This has been previously used to connect Oswald's dad to the FNAF AR bullies. And honestly, I don't have an alternative solution, besides the fact that this entire world or game might just be taking place in the agony world of the ball pit after Oswald goes in for the first time. So who knows if what we're actually seeing is something that exists in the real world. Now that we've gone through all the games, I'm gonna try to rush through most of the book references unless they're more lore significant. The Silver Eyes characterizes Afton as speaking through the Yellow Rabbit / Spring Bonnie head, refusing to answer the teen's questions before wearing the Spring Bonnie headpiece. Fazbear Frights has a few connections, starting with the story Dance With Me, where AR novelty glasses from Circus Baby's Pizza World are introduced. This of course seems to relate to the AR Vanny mask and could have been a way for Scott to test out the idea of this AR world stuff in the FNAF universe. Next up, Andrew, a contender for the vengeful spirit within the games, is noted as wearing a green alligator mask in the short story The Man in Room 1280, which could be a way to connect him to Monty or this kid from Happiest Day in FNAF 3. The short story Friendly Face also has a sort of role reversal of the regular depictions of head/masks, where a human face or mask is put on to an animatronic cat. In the Stitch Wraith Stingers, the Stitch Wraith wears a mask or head from Jake's doll in the story The Real Jake, likely the reason that Jake is attached to the Stitch Wraith's body. The epilogues also include the puppet's mask as a weapon that Larson uses against the Agony, Afton's final form as a giant rabbit amalgamation, hinting at the spiritual energy within the mask itself. You're the Band, a scrapped story for Fazbear Frights that I mentioned earlier, also includes a Freddy Fazbear mask that slowly seems to give a child the memories and personality of the MCI Freddy victim. A decent number of the Tales from the Pizzaplex stories include AR or VR attractions, connecting these stories to the events of Ruin with the Vanny mask, as well as both Help Wanted games with their VR connections. In the fan favorite story, Animatronic Apocalypse, the weird principal wears a Freddy Fazbear rubber mask to a club meeting, which is very suspicious activity. And he also bleeds a black liquid called oil? And now on to the last main source that I'm going to be looking at, the interactive novels. VIP includes the main use of a mask or head within these stories, that being in the form of another AR headset. This one is styled like a Glamrock Freddy head, can be used to multiply arcade scores, and is called MOE, which stands for the Max Occupancy Experience. It was intended to be used for when the Pizzaplex is at maximum occupancy, or when part or all of the Pizzaplex is under construction, so that people can still go to their favorite attractions. Some theorists have considered that Gregory may have used the MOE, which would explain his ridiculously high scores in Security Breach and the short story GGY. It would also add on to the connections between Gregory and Glamrock Freddy. Next, the week before has a sequence where you have to repair Bonnie's head, as it had previously fallen off his body. While on the hunt for a tool in the backstage to fix him, you can put on a Freddy Fazbear mask/head to try to ward off Foxy. However, as expected, it doesn't fool Foxy and you die. This section feels like a clear reference to the FNAF 2 game mechanics. And that's about it. I may have missed a couple here or there, but I'm sure you guys won't let me get away with it down in the comments if I do. So, what patterns do we see across the use of masks in FNAF media, and how does this help us in our understanding of the Mimic? Let's see what secrets we've uncovered. The first major theme I noticed was in how the masks, or heads, were used in the Scott/Click Team era games. It seems very clear to me that in these games, masks represent or connect to spirits and possession. I've already explained how Give Gifts Give Life, the FNAF 3 endings, Happiest Day, and the FNAF 4 bullies all connect to spirits and memories, specifically those of the crying child. This trend of spirits and masks continue with Sister Location and Ennard, as I explained previously with the removable faceplates and the progression/meaning behind Ennard's identity through the mask. So, I think as a general pattern, Scott originally used the masks or heads as a way to show the states of the spirits and where the remnant currently resides. This is even reflected in some of the stories from Fazbear Frights, where Andrew wears an alligator mask, similar to the spirits in Give Gifts Give Life and Happiest Day, as well as the Stitch Wraith wearing a mask in the epilogues. The Stitch Wraith's mask is the Jake doll, meaning that Jake likely possessed it. This then explains why Jake can more easily see and control the body than Andrew. Andrew possessed the Fetch battery pack, so he controls the power supply of the endoskeleton that they're inhabiting. The mask connects to the state of Jake in the endo, who can actually control their physical vessel. However, once the Steel Wool Mimic era begins, the use of masks seems to shift. For a start, we see the masks more associated with AR and VR environments/situations. There also seems to be more indications that the mask's importance originates from some time during the days of MCM and Fall Fest, all the way before even Fredbear's Family Diner. After all, we see a mask sign outside what looks like a gift shop for MCM. Not to mention the double vision puzzle existing when MCM's around, meaning an early version of the Vanny mask likely also existed, similar to the Data Diver with the Faz Wrench. How would a double vision puzzle exist without a way to see both sides of the puzzle? That would also explain the repeated connection of different FNAF character masks being worn at Fall Fest, as these masks would have likely been sold at or near the Fall Fest. Whether this would be with or without the AR tech is more so up to personal headcanon at this point, as Secret of the Mimic, or other games from around that time period, aren't out yet for us to see. We also see old comedy and tragedy masks that appear to be based off of the designs of Sun and Moon, likely meaning that these also originated from the days of Fall Fest and MCM. Masks also seem to be indicative of someone under the control of a mimic form, or at least being influenced by it. We see Cassie slowly get corrupted by the Vanny mask with Helpy, until we finally reach the Brazil ending, where Helpy seems to have trapped Cassie in a false happy reality. After Vanessa is under Glitch Trap's influence, she immediately either finds or constructs the Curse of Dreadbear Vanny mask, furthering this connection between mimic branches and these masks. Glitch Trap also initially spreads to Vanessa through the use of a VR headset. And in multiple Tales stories, the Mimic seems to have infected many of the VR and AR attractions scattered throughout the Pizzaplex. So, to put it simply, I believe masks and heads in the Mimic arc represent someone or something under the influence of a branch of the Mimic, contrasting the original series of games where they represented a spirit's influence and state within a given vessel. Another twisted reflection that the Mimic is inadvertently created in the modern era. The Mimic is drawn to the imagery or use of masks, likely because of their shared MCM and Fall Fest origins, with the Mimic possibly being upgraded back in the 70s to interact with these masks, like how we see it interact with VR attractions in all the examples that I listed previously. But we'll have to wait for Secret of the Mimic to get any real evidence of that origin theory. Now, there remains one mask reference that we haven't discussed yet that I think is very important to the story. The Bonnie mask from Help Wanted 2. Why have I waited till now to discuss it? Because I have a fairly hot take regarding this specific mask. I don't think this mask is supposed to be telling us that the Bonnie bully is Cassie's dad. Or at least I don't think that that is the main piece of information that we're supposed to get from this secret. I add that last part because it's really tough to disprove the Bonnie Bully Cassie Dad connection theory. After all, it's only a Bonnie mask related to some sort of lost memories. There isn't a lot to counter with, considering that the Bonnie Bully's only defining trait was wearing a Bonnie mask, and the Bite of 83 would have been a bad memory from a long time ago. However, to see my theory on the meaning of this specific Bonnie mask, you're gonna have to wait till next video. I know, I hate leaving you guys on a cliffhanger like this, but the analysis section took way longer than I expected to script out and write, and I have a lot more to say about Cassie's dad and this Bonnie mask. As a result, I've mixed around the schedule a little bit, and the next 2 videos should be shorter topics than usual. The first one will be focused on this Bonnie mask connection, and the other one should be focused on all things Tales games. Expect both of those to come out within the next 2.5 weeks-ish, depending on how my schedule turns out. If you guys enjoyed this theory, or more so analysis this time, please consider subscribing and leaving a like on the video. It helps out a ton with the channel and I really appreciate it. Also, comment with any criticisms or questions that you have, and I may include it in a future upload, or at least I'll respond when I can. And with all that said, this is going to be Mini Bike Games heading out. See you guys next time!